Welcome back to the Travsessed podcast. We're your hosts, Kim and Aaron. We are healthcare travelers and the creators of Travsessed. Travsessed provides on the clock, off the clock resources for healthcare travelers, on the clock being this podcast, and our amazing course, Traveler's School, off the clock being Travsessed Adventures, which is where you would come when you are not in a contract. And we are currently sitting in Bali, awaiting arrival of our Travsessed Bali Travelers 2023. It's going to be amazing. And we have another awesome traveler quick tip Tuesday. You know what that means. Let's get into it. Let's rock and roll. Here we go.
Flight crew, please prepare for departure.
All right, so this traveler quick tip kind of tickles my fancy and not like a good way. I think out of a lot of the questions we get, this one literally drives me insane. Like fills me with anger and rage.
Okay.
And I don't know why, but we can talk about it.
Go. What's the question?
So the question is the constant, which companies are the best and which recruiter should I use? And for me, what that screams and the anger is just like, wow. It's sad how many people don't really understand the industry.
Yeah, but you have to think, I mean, honestly, if I was just starting, like that's your first question. Yeah, no, I get what you're, like, that's the first question is, where do I start? Where do I begin? What company do I use? What recruiter do I use? Right? So it's the new people coming in that is one of the first questions because you don't know where to begin. They don't know the right questions to ask, and that's the first question they ask.
Correct. And I think that's what leads me to the anger, because it's not the question being asked, it's the answers being given.
Yeah, I mean, I think people love to share their recruiters, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. I think the issue that I find is that there's a lot of, so the travel industry, as you know, like if you're listening to our podcast, if you've gone through our course, Traveler School, like if you come to any of our live streams or workshops, like you know that there's a lot to learn when it comes to being a traveler and how this industry works. And there's a lot of gray areas and things to like figure out to really educate yourself to be knowledgeable and savvy when it comes to this industry. And there's a lot of travelers who don't really understand how the industry works or how pay works or any of that. And so they're working with recruiters that they're like, ooh, like they're cool or they're nice or whatever the reason. And they're recommending their recruiters, but they don't really understand how things work. So they don't really get that their recruiter might not be the best.
Or robbing them blind.
Exactly. So they're just like, oh, work with Susie. She's great. She's so fun. She sends me pictures of her dog. But then she doesn't know that Susie's like blindly like ripping her, I don't know why I said ripping.
It's weird.
I had a weird
ripping
thought.
Her off?
Yeah, I just had a weird thing cross my mind that, whoa, okay. Yeah, ripping her off late at night, like shoveling cash that should be hers into her own bank account. And so that's where I'm like, listen, if you're going to get referrals for certain recruiters, it really is important that you're asking people who understand the industry and feel like their recruiters are solid and are good quality in how they pay and how they show up, and not just random Joe Blow work with my recruiter.
Right, and this podcast is not this particular episode, not podcast, episode is not to dive into the questions that you should ask. The point is just understanding that when people refer their recruiters, understanding that not all recruiters are created equal, not all recruiters within the same company are created equal. A lot of times it's not even the company, it's the recruiter. So like company, big umbrella, you can look at like what benefits they offer and kind of like how their insurance works and things like that. But then when it comes down to the nitty gritty of your contracts, understanding that two recruiters that work side by side, desk by desk, could do things completely different. And so whether they pay you the blended rate for call and callbacks, whether they're making sure that you're on your extensions, you're getting things worked back in that was originally your money. Like, there's so many little things that your recruiter should be doing for you that people that refer only think they're doing right, and so they're referring them out. And so that's what I would want our people that listen to this podcast, when people say like, where should I start? Where should I begin? What recruiters are the best? Like, it should be more of a generalized answer of like, hey, like, not all recruiters are created equal. My recruiter is great, and here's why.
Yeah.
And explaining that out and taking the time to do that, because you're not only educating that new person, but you're educating the entire community around giving correct answers and understanding that there's a reason why these recruiters are good.
Yeah. I think, yes, 100%. And I think also asking people who are in the industry who understand it. So, people,
that's a perception as well.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, but people, they're standard
Everybody
people.
claims that they're experts.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I guess. But yeah, I think just being aware. I mean, like, for an example, we referred our first recruiter that we had for a long time. We're like, oh, she's great. And we genuinely really liked her a lot. And like, I liked talking to her, and she was super cool. And it felt like she had our back, and she supported us and all the things. But as we slowly began to learn about the industry and how it worked, because we took the time to educate ourselves, we realized that she was holding out a lot of money from us that should be ours. And we didn't realize that. And so we're just like, oh, work with her, she's awesome. But really, we were referring people to a recruiter that honestly I would never refer anybody to her now, right? Like, because she was doing, like, it's not even shady shit, but she was just taking advantage of the fact that we didn't really understand how things worked, and she knew that, and so she took additional money that should have been ours. And I don't want to work with someone like that, nor do I want to refer someone to to somebody like that. But we weren't doing that with ill intent. We were naive ourselves. So it's like the blind leading the blind. And that's what you see a lot of, is like, oh, and so that's an issue with our industry. So that's why we do our best to educate people, to know the right questions to ask, to work with the right people, because your recruiters are such an important part of this whole thing. And you want to work with ones that you have a good relationship with and that you can build trust on. And so we have two really great recruiters that we love, that we know do the right things, that work with great companies. I'll put their information in the show notes below. You can always reach out to us and ask us for any referrals. I know that we know the industry and that our recruiters know the industry.
Yeah.
So that's always an option. But yeah, I think just being thoughtful of who you're asking this question to, and knowing that I understand where the question comes from. I 100% would do the same thing if I would be blowing up who should I work with? Who should I work with? Of course. So I get it. But if you're listening to this podcast, you are in a more, like, you're in the know. Like, this is a great resource for travelers. Yeah, you're in the know. You're wanting to learn. You're wanting to empower yourself. You're wanting to educate yourself. You're in a different playing field than a lot of other travelers. And so, Well, and also, if you're a seasoned traveler and you listen to this podcast, please help us spread the message of, like, that, these newbies out there that are starting, like, we want them to be guided from the beginning. And the more of us in the Travsessed community that can reach out and help new travelers, like, hit the ground running at a faster rate, like, that only helps the industry and helps the industry grow. And I want our Travsessed community to be a part of that, and, like, always helping out the new people by giving empowered answers and saying, you can work with my recruiter, and here's why, and here's a way that you should, what you should be looking for. And just small list, right? Like, take the time. Yeah. Perfect.
All right.
We'll leave it at that.
Done.
For now. Okay.
Alrighty.
That was
my dumplings are here.
in and out, man.
Love
in
it.
and out.
That's how I like it.
Just like my.
Okay. Bye-bye.